Klaren is the founder of Thinkwise, and he has always been and still is a visionary conscience. And you would think, oh, if he's going to talk about never legacy, you know, and if you hear vision, you always associate this with two words: new, brand new, or everything different, out with all the old, in with the new. And Victor is actually going to make the case why that is not always the right approach, and why sometimes it's a good thing to look at what you've got already and change it, adapt it. It's a bit like having a beautiful old house. You know, it's easy to tear it down and say, we all need modern houses, and we need to rebuild, and we need to use new technology. But there's an awful lot you can do with an existing structure that you love, or you love it because of the location, or you love it because of particular features. It's the same with technology. There's often a lot to love that you want to keep, and it doesn't mean that you have to throw it all away to get what you want on the positive side. Victor, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Connie. Good afternoon. You know, free the world of legacy has always been our goal from the beginning. But there is a lot of legacy in the world, so we have to speed up this process a bit. And wouldn't it be great if we could free the world of legacy at the push of a button? And I think with all the possibilities of AI, with AI as give, we can really achieve this goal. So, what's the agenda for today? First, I would like to share you what are those huge problems with legacy software, and why is legacy software still there? And what is our upcycling technology? How do we modernize legacy software? And then there are some assumptions people have why not to modernize software. I will share them with you. They seem to be very valid, but I think those are the wrong assumptions. You can modernize software on one end, but then it would be great if software stays modern automatically. What do we do with legacy prevention? And VDL already upcycled their core application in 2015 and developed afterwards. So we can probably learn a few things from them, what you can achieve with upcycling your core. And finally, the Thinkwise effect. What can the platform mean for your organization? But first, legacy software. I mean, what is legacy software? There are quite a few definitions on the internet, of course, but basically, legacy software is older, outdated software which companies, which businesses still use. Unfortunately, it comes with a lot of problems. First of all, maintaining legacy software is very, very costly. Companies with a lot of legacy software, they spend around 80% of their IT budget on legacy software. And you basically get nothing for it. You just keep the system running. So you only have 20% budget left to change your legacy system or you change your other systems. So you have a very low pace of change. And although your suppliers still might support your legacy software, your real problem is that your developers will retire. So your developers will retire. Hiring new developers is very, very hard, but hiring new developers with experience of COBOL and RPG is basically impossible. So you don't have your development support. And then the application itself. What is the most important part of your business software? It's data, right? It's everything about data nowadays. So data is the most important part, and it is stuck in a silo. You cannot reach it very well. You cannot integrate with your other systems. It's there on its own. And then, of course, compliance is much harder. Security is at risk. Companies are being hacked these days. So, what is the legacy problem in US dollars? In 2022, in the US, government and businesses spent over $1 trillion on maintenance of IT. And a very large part of that is legacy software. So they spent over $1 trillion just to keep the lights on. This is how big this problem is. So why it's still there? If that problem is so big, why it's still there? We tend to talk negatively about legacy software, but most legacy software has some very special functionality. They fulfill a critical business need, and that's why we can't do without. We need it. And of course, you can rewrite it in another programming language, but that's very costly and very risky as well. So you have a lot of cost, a lot of risk, and you basically end up with the same. So it's very easy to look the other way for a year and another year and another year. This is the reason where our banks, the core of our banks, run on COBOL. You have a fancy app, but the core runs on COBOL. And it will give a problem in the end. But the biggest problem of all is that today we have more developers than ever. They're more productive than ever. We're still writing lines of code. So this problem will increase. The $1 trillion will go up. So what is our upcycling technology? What do we do about legacy replacement? I'm going to be a bit more technical. What you see here on the left are a couple of legacy applications. You see 4, but you have probably a bit more. On the right, you see the Thinkwise application, and our applications always have a model and have technology. The model is the unique description of the application. The standard is the technology we deliver, how we keep your applications up to date. So if we want to modernize legacy application, then we have to derive the model from the legacy application and this stored in our application. So what are things we can derive? When you look at data, of course we derive data structure. Tables, columns, domains, references, everything you have to store your data. We can normalize your data model. When you look at legacy applications, sometimes you have lookup tables that are stored in one physical table, then you have to write less UI. We will normalize those things. So we will normalize the data model. We will get rid of everything you don't use. So we'll simplify the model, empty tables, empty columns, columns with a few values. We throw them away. We make it as small as possible. Legacy software is most of the time very limited in naming conventions. You can have every name as long as it's 8 characters. We will improve naming conventions so your software becomes very readable. And of course, we can run validations on the model and your data as well. A very important step is that we can migrate your data from your legacy software to your database of choice, maybe Azure in the cloud, and we can do that automatically. This is only the data part. From UI, it depends a bit from the technology where you came from, but for UI, we can derive controls, constraints, everything you see in your screen, object translations, messages, layout. We can import it as well. Process is a bit more. Processes in legacy software are often very implicit. So legacy software tend to be not very process-oriented. The process is described in your manual. But we can derive processes, for instance, with external tooling for process mining. So we can derive processes from your transaction data, or we just use your ISO descriptions, or you can use some best practices from Thinkwise clients or the internet. These 3 we already could do for, I think, over a decade. Our showcase VDL is 2015, 8 years ago, and we could do it very well at that time. We always told our prospects and clients we can upcycle 20 to 50%, depending what your legacy software is. So what is the other 50% we couldn't do? Those other 50% are the business rules. We had to add those. But now, with AI, with ChatGPT, we can analyze the legacy software a bit further, and we can translate those business rules to what we use, for instance, in SQL. Or even better, to transform it to our process flows. We have done some tests on Uniface, on RPG, and they look very, very promising. We are not there yet, but this looks very promising. So if we can do this, if we can use that, then we're not upcycling 20 to 50%, but 80 to 100%. And hopefully very close to 100%. And then you have your first version of your model, so your first version of your legacy application. And then we add technology to that. We add our user interface, our service tier, and they runtime interpreted the model. And it comes with a lot of implicit extras. For instance, our application has a service tier, an API for every object. So in your legacy software, your data was stuck in a silo, you upcycle it, and suddenly you have an API for every object. That's a big improvement. UI is very rich, much richer than your legacy software was. We are capable of dealing with non-structured data. I think there were some demos today. But also authentication, authorization is much more are richer. I mean, authorization in legacy software is often menu-based. In our case, you can authorize on field level or even on data level. And data level is very important when you want to build some portals. Users can change their own screens with user preferences, and we'll make those UIs even self-learning. And last, you can also analyze your users to train them better or to make your software, to improve your software. So we upcycle 80 to 100%, but you also get some stuff extra, some real important stuff. And then finally, you can also enhance your model. We can analyze the model and enhance the model automatically. For instance, your legacy software is probably based on desktop screens. So when you upcycle it, you'll have desktop screens as well. But now we can add for every object a screen for a tablet or a phone. So suddenly, your legacy software, run on the most modern technology, is also available on any device. Of course, you can add submodels from the Things store, and things you would like to add is make those applications self-learning. We do everything with runtime interpretation, so we can easily do that. And if you make your application self-learning, it also means you need less requirements. Does it make sense to specify, for instance, a sort order for 800 grids? Or you just leave it and a small group start using it, they will add the sort order automatically, and then you copy the best practice to the rest. In 5 minutes, the problem is solved, instead of a lot of interviews for such a stupid functionality. So self-learning can make your requirements phase a lot shorter. Another thing is where we have to look at how can we have users participate in extending the model. So call it citizen development, but not in creating one single app, but citizen development for extending your integrated model. Not changing, because what we have built is very critical, but extending. Citizen developers, users have good ideas, but you let them extend the model instead of registering a ticket. And finally, of course, you can also add best practices. And now we've modernized our first application. But there are more, so we go on to the next one. And for every application, we should decide, are we going to interface? Do we leave it alone? Or are we going to upcycle it and integrate it into our model? So the model is not a description of one application, the Never legacy application. It's a description of the Never legacy application landscape. We're going to put those applications together and have one integrated definition. It may result in a couple of applications, but we have one integrated definition, and that gives a lot of controllability. We use our upcycler a lot in our sales process, just to show clients what we can do. When we use it, I think around 50% uses the upcycler in their project as well. 30% chooses to build from scratch, and the other 20% don't become our clients. But I think that 30%, they could use the upcycler even a bit more. But there are some assumptions why they don't use it. For instance, garbage in is garbage out. My legacy software is not perfect. I have a lot of things I don't like, so I don't want to upcycle it, because then I have all those bad things, I have it back, and that's not what I want. Seems to be valid, right? Or when I'm going to upcycle, I create my own Big Bang, and I think that's too risky for my organization, so this is not what I want. Or my legacy software is a monolith, and a monolith is not very flexible, so when I'm going to upcycle, I get another monolith, and that's not what I want. Those three assumptions seem to be valid. But when you look at garbage in, garbage out, I don't think it's not about the bad stuff, it's about the good stuff. You have some unique functionality, and you upcycle it, you use it. And where your legacy software was basically a dead end, when you've upcycled it, you can change it. It's a new starting point. You can change it right away. And the good news is, your legacy software probably have a backlog, a pretty long backlog. So you already know what you want to improve. So you're going to upcycle, you can start with your backlog, and you can change it right away. You only have to decide, do I want to change it before or after going live? So the modernization, you can stay to a strict one-to-one modernization, go live, and do all the improvements afterwards. Or you want to do before going live, and then you have a bit longer project. When you're afraid of a Big Bang, then you probably have a lot of experience with SAP or some other huge ERP solution. When we're going to upcycle, you recognize the application immediately. So it feels more like a sophisticated upgrade. People recognize the data, people recognize the structure in the screens, people recognize the menu items. They know immediately how they should work with the software. So although you upcycle everything, it's not a Big Bang. For users, there's hardly any training needed. They recognize everything. You can have a phase-by-phase approach, so you leave your legacy intact and you modernize one module, another one. That is possible, but you can only switch off your legacy application when you have done all the modules. We have done a couple of those projects, and to be honest, those projects were not the fastest. So if you can, please do it at once. Then the monolith. We derive a model. So we like to have an integral model because you can control it. So it's not necessarily a monolith application, but you have an integral definition of your landscape. It may result in different application. So it is not necessary to create a monolith. In the past, clients have tried to copy microservice with Thinkwise. That's possible, but in the end, they worked with the integral model because that worked better for them. So I wouldn't advise that. Of course, you can work with microservices around Thinkwise, but I should go for the integral model. So this is modernization on one end. So what do we do to prevent legacy from coming back? This was our DNA, so we did it from the start. So we provided our clients with new UIs. 20 years ago with a UI in Visual Basic in a 2-tier environment. Nowadays they have React with a 3-tier environment, but they never had to throw away their software. The software was defined in a model, so they improved their model, they changed their model, and we provided them with new technologies. We did it for the UI, we did it for the service tier, so we have proven to be able to change architectures. And now we're working on text and speech. We already added to work with unstructured data, so you will also get more possibilities, but still on UI and service tier. Our business rules are written in SQL. We use aspect-oriented programming to reduce the number of lines as much as possible, but we still have lines of code. But now with AI, we are able to transform those codes to natural language, plain English, or to other code. So if SQL becomes outdated and we want to migrate our templates to other code, we can do that. We can also analyze the quality of code. That's already in the release of today. And we will be able to improve code based on your own programming guidelines. So we get more grip on the code, and we can transform it to future programming languages. So suddenly, we're able to modernize till 100%, and we are able to prevent legacy from coming back to 100%. So that is very close to at the push of a button. Not everything will be there in 3 months, but it looks very promising that this is feasible. Then the VDL showcase. VDL, we did a core VDL in 2015. They had their own ERP solution built in RPG. They already had chosen to upcycle it to Thinkwise. But I mean, when you work a couple of decades with an RPG environment, then you have really a large backlog. So they had to decide, do I want to add those things before or after going live? And of course, when you have a long backlog, then before going live is probably better for the business because they get some extras. But they had 32 factories running on that system. So we asked one representative, one per factory, to have a meeting about the priorities of the backlog. So including management, there were over 35 people. We have had that meeting once, because of course it didn't work. It was impossible to prioritize the backlog. So the board decided we go to a one-to-one upcycling. A one-to-one upcycle with only 2 exceptions. We had to add the EDI engine, and we had to add the quality management system, which was already built in our technology. Those were the 2 exceptions. For all the other things, when somebody had the requirement, we looked if it is already in the software, okay. If it is not, put it on the list. But that makes the project a lot easier. We modernized the system in just over 1 year, which is very short. They built it in I think, over 2 decades. So we modernized it in just over 1 year. And then we implemented in 32 factories within 2 years. An average of 6 weeks per factory. We had data migration automatically. We had the users recognize the software very well. So in 6 weeks, the factory went live. Then there were another 10 factories. But the next 10, after the 32, those were factories that had off-the-shelf solutions, such as Ritter, Glovia, and even SAP. We had to implement our system there as well. But then we had a problem because we didn't have the data conversion available. We had to map every field from SAP to our solution. And suddenly, the 6 weeks went up to 6 months or even longer. So you see that only one little dot, the data transformation you get for free in the upcycler, gives you such a huge advantage. Then the garbage in, garbage out. The VDL solution in 2015 was not perfect to them, but there was some specific functionality they would like to keep. In 2015, these were the list of subjects which contains the software. These were subjects that was in their ERP solution. In the 7 years after, they added and changed this. So can you change? Yes. Maybe they were forced to a one-to-one upcycle, but we could do it very fast, and afterwards they could change. So is there some garbage? Yes. But by upcycling and changing, you go fast. You have a lot of success. Two slides about the Thinkwise effect from a different perspective. When you have a couple of applications, you see here 10 applications, maybe you have more, then I think you should decide which application is for me a commodity, and I leave it there. Commodity, in my opinion, is your financial, your accounting software, your salary system, your HR, and maybe your ERP, depends on your business. But you also have unique software, which makes the difference for your business, which will change more often, which has to follow changes in your business. Those are business critical applications. You have to rebuild it, or better modernize, and you can put them in one model description, one description of your landscape. We provide you with the newest technology. You take care of the model. So if your business changes, your model changes. You take care of that. If technology changes, we come up with a new standard. So in this way, you keep your application landscape up to date in a functional and technical way. Then, from another perspective, when you look at software development, you can describe it in this quadrant. On one hand, you have maintenance. On the other hand, you have innovation. You have your functional area, you have technical area. When you look at technical innovation, for instance, is migrating your application to a new programming language. That box is red, as well as maintenance. Because your business don't care. Your business don't care about maintenance. Your business don't care about technical innovation. They do care if your software is not running very well or if your software is outdated. That's another thing. But they basically don't care about those three. They care about functional innovation. That makes a difference for your business and for your clients. But if you have to spend 80% of your budget on those 3 red boxes, then there's hardly any budget or any time left to the real functional innovation. So with Thinkwise, when you use the Thinkwise platform, you basically outsource the technical stuff. We provide you with new technologies when they are there. And with our platform, your functional maintenance becomes very easy. So you have not to spend a lot of time there. So your focus can be fully on functional innovation. And that's where you make the difference. So please focus on functional innovation. That's what your business and your clients deserve. Thank you.